Welcome everyone to 2x2 exhibition, the 2022 edition, and it features the work of Tom Carey, Shelia Chimes, Phyllis Gorsen, John Hubbard, Sam Jones, Al Kelman, Charles Muldowney, Jim Stewart, Diane Tomash, and Julie Zahn. So we're glad you can make it to tonight's tour and talk. Tina is going to move through the exhibition, and we're going to stop at each artist's work, and they'll tell us a little bit about themselves, their practice, and the work on display. So the show itself is up through December 24th. So we hope you can come down and see it in person. Everything is also available on our website. So I'm going to spotlight Tina's video. And the first artist we're going to see is Phyllis Gorsen. Hello, Phyllis.
Hi, everyone. How are you? I'm actually very excited to be in the show. It's my first time showing any kind of work at Cerulean. So I've known Mike for a really long time, maybe like 20 years.
20 years.
I started, I've been painting since I was a kid. But when I started making my foray back into art more seriously, I was in the continuing ed program for like 10 years. And then in 2002, I bit the bullet and went back and got my master's at PAFA. So hello, PAFA alum. And I've gone through many different types of work. And right now, I think I kind of landed in a spot that I'm very happy with. I call this series of work collage paintings. And people always ask me about my process. First of all, the work is nature centered. It's more, I think people kind of coined it like magical Zen, where I create these sort of fantastical scenes with like humanity kind of actively, passively interacting with nature. And it's really to highlight the beauty of how I perceive nature and how it makes me feel, or most of us feel. I do create these initially, I call them collage paintings for a reason, is because I do start each composition with a full painting and then I collage on top. And you can see it's pretty labor intensive. It's tons and tons of tiny little pieces of paper. So they take me a very, very long time to complete each piece. So part of the reason why I do the painting first is not only to create that first layer, which gives it a lot more depth, but also it helps me work through the composition, because once you start collaging, it kind of changes how much I can work with each piece. So this is kind of a good sample of the kind of work I've been doing lately. So any thoughts or questions?
What kind of glue do you use?
I use gel medium. Actually, yeah, I have this to show you. It's kind of the collage artist's medium of choice, like golden gel medium, and it comes in a lot of different viscosities. I use heavy gel and then I just water it down depending on the kind of material I'm using, because I not only use paper, and I didn't even mention with the paper, a lot of it I paint or do like monoprints, but I also buy marble paper, like really expensive, beautiful printed papers from all over the world. And I also have canvas in there as well that I collage on, and then I'll do something a little heavier. I'll make the adhesive a little heavier for that.
Is your substrate a canvas?
Yes, mostly. But I have done it on wood panel.
Yeah. Nice.
Thank you, Phyllis. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
And next we have the work of Shelia Chimes. Hello, Shelia.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you for watching. And thank you, Mike and Tina, most of all, for this opportunity. I guess a little bit about myself. I grew up in Philly, been here my whole life, went to Moore College of Art in the 70s, and didn't do too much painting after that. It took me a while to get back in, and once my kids were grown, I started taking some classes at PAFA, and that gave me a good jump start. And anyway, I've always painted from observation, and I've often paint still lifes, and they're usually of like more common objects, things you might overlook, you know, little bits of things and tools and oddball things, but actually not too many paintings of fruits and vegetables. So this was kind of, although I know we all think of, when I think of still life, that's actually the first thing that comes to my mind. But anyway, when Tina asked if I'd like to participate, I think the first thing that actually came to my mind was this eggplant that I had in my refrigerator. And that was kind of, I went with that, and that was really the where I took off from. And I didn't have 4 paintings of the same size, so I had to kind of start from scratch. And I decided to use a large plate for all of them to kind of tie them together. And I think it kind of acts like a bullseye. And I just, the only thing that I would change all the fruit and vegetables, and of course what the plate is sitting on for each. So the only common thing is the plate. And I've been painting this kind of bird's eye view of things for a while. I don't know, I guess it sits comfortably with me. And I don't usually set it up quite like this. I usually scatter things on the tabletop. So this was a little bit going off my usual course. So, but anyway, that's about how where they came from and where they are now. So I guess that's about it. But I really like painting fruits and vegetables, I've discovered. So I think I'll try it again.
So Shelia,
Colors, you can't beat the colors, you know. So.
your style is very direct.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So do you do these like in one shot or over time, or?
They would take, each one took a few days, but it's funny you say that because I keep saying to myself that I should do more one-shot paintings, you know, just to get them even looser, you know. But you know, that is something about still life. It's there and you can paint it as long as you want. And sometimes I tend to go maybe too long. So, I've always painted from observation. I wish I was like some people who just go up to a canvas and start, but that's never worked for me somehow. So.
Well, they look great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. They were fun to do.
And next we come to Al Kelman. Hello, Al. Oh, Al, you're muted.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
So thank you, everybody, for zooming in, and thank you, Tina and Mike, for giving me the chance to show my work. I am an amateur photographer living in Center City, about 3 blocks away from Shelia. And as you can tell from this work, I spend a lot of time wandering up and down the Schuylkill River. These photos were taken during the pandemic. So everything was extra quiet, which was one of my ambitions. I was working hard to avoid people. I shoot with a big fat digital camera. I have to develop my own pictures. I use a package called Lightroom, which is the baby brother of Photoshop, which means that I don't get to alter them very much, which is just as well, I don't want to. This is a wonderful counterpoint to what we just saw, because here I'm not creating the scene, I'm on an impromptu basis reacting to what I see. And I wander up and down the river looking for something to happen that catches my eye. These reflections and shadows are truly momentary. This particular picture we're looking at, when I went back to it no more than 5 or 6 minutes later, the reflections were totally different and not nearly as compelling. I try, as you'll see in all of these pictures, I try hard to fill the frame. There's not a lot of dead space here. And I have a keen attraction to color, as you can also see from these. I don't doctor them. I use a big camera with very big lenses, and they capture a lot of light, even at this twilight time, like the picture we're looking at now. This is the Chestnut Street Bridge in the distance, and you can see how the city is lit up. One of the things that attracts me to the city work is that at night, everything is very different. These cities during the day are hustle and bustle and cars and noise and some things that aren't very pleasant, and it all turns to harmony as we go to sunset every day, and I adore it. This picture is at sunset, looking under the Walnut Street Bridge, well, under the Chestnut Street Bridge, south down the river. The Roberts Chop Healthcare Center is there. In the far, you can see the sunset coming in, and the reflections are just fabulous. I shoot these pretty slowly to really capture the reflections. So the fastest of these is 2 seconds, and a couple of them are 8 seconds.
Wow.
Obviously with a tripod. They were not done on the same outing. This is a handful of outings done in the autumn of 21. Again, very nice weather and the absence of very many people. I started this stumbling into it. I bought a beautiful camera to take a great trip about 12 years ago, and came home feeling like an idiot, because what I had was a computer around my neck that happened to have a lens. And I said, you know, I either give this thing away or I learn how to use it. And that started my journey at UArts. I took every class they had except the thesis, and I'm still studying with the same teacher. And COVID was a great opportunity to learn how to use Zoom. And I was with her every Tuesday for 2.5 years. And it was very developmental. So that's the journey in a thumbnail. I'm happy to answer any questions now or later.
They're lovely. Just
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful.
I do print them myself. I broke down and upgraded my printer for this occasion. It was a perfect excuse.
I
Thank
really
you, Val.
love the yellows in your paintings, particularly the one on the top left of the building. Maybe it's nice.
30th Street Station looks so much better at night. It's just amazing. And the one on the left used to be the post office. Now it's office space, much of it University of Pennsylvania staff. And that too just jumps at nighttime. By day, it's just another building.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you all.
So next we come to the work of Sam Jones. And unfortunately, Sam can't be here with us tonight. And next we come to the work of Sam Jones. And Sam unfortunately can't be with us tonight, but he sent me his artist statement. So I'm going to read that. In this series, I explore the relationship between painting and music, and each work is titled after a specific song or album. Song of the Sleeping Forest is the title of a piece by the Japanese composer Suzumi Yokata. And in the painting, I attempt to visually translate the melodic, ephemeral beauty that this song captures. The imagery in the painting is suggestive of the landscape and body and provides the viewer with a tangible space to enter. Mixing Colors is the title of the Contemplative Soundscape album by Brian and Roger Eno. In this painting, I consider the relationship between color and sound and how the blurred space between visual and auditory perception can carry significant emotional intensity. No Lonesome Tune is the title of a Townes Van Zandt song, and in this painting, I utilize a free associative automatic drawing process. The song is full of heartbreak, loneliness, and regret, but Van Zandt conveys these feelings in a humorous and cartoonish way, and my painting is an attempt to portray these contradictory emotions visually. Into the Mystic references the astonishingly beautiful Van Morrison song, which in my mind functions as a psychological portal. In this painting, I consider how color, surface, line, and form can create spaces that are psychological and emotional, rather than illusionistic. And in doing so, I attempt to invent a visual portal that is parallel to the auditory portal that Van Morrison created. And next we come to the work of Charles Muldowney, who is here with us tonight. Hello, Charles.
Hi, how are you? So Mike wanted us to say a little bit about ourselves, who we are. I was brought up in a family of artists. My mother studied with Martin Jackson, and she encouraged me to go to night school. I went at the age of 16 to night school and studied with Elizabeth Ferry, who is a teacher at Tyler. And she encouraged me to go to school. So I went to Philadelphia College of Art, which is now the University of the Arts. I studied printmaking and painting for undergraduate. And then for graduate, I studied at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, again, studying painting and printmaking. I said I'm from a family of artists. I have 12 children, and 5 of us went to PAFA at the same time. I have 2 of my children went to Tyler for printmaking and photography. I've got 5 writers in the family. My son Micah just published a poetry book. I got 1 dancer and 1 farrier. And 4 of us are teaching college level classes. And 2 of us are teaching at PAFA, actually, in the CE program. And so the type of work I do is representational painting. I do landscapes, cityscapes, and religious narratives. I have a website if anybody's interested in checking that out. It's charlesmuldowney.com. I use oil, watercolor, and I have a press, so I do printmaking. So my process is to work plein air, and then with the plein air images, I work either on them or from them. I take photos while I'm doing plein air work, and I use these photos as sketches to enhance the work. And then actually in the end, it's all about imagination. I employ my imagination on what information I have. That's my work. I had a professor, by the way, at PAFA, who told me that my language was clouds. So I use clouds in my paintings.
Thank you, Charles. They're really wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to swing the ship to the other wall. And we're coming to the work of Tom Carey, who joins us from Michigan this evening. Hello, Tom.
Hey, everybody. Thanks to Mike and Tina for letting me be in the show. So these pieces are all made cut paper. It's handmade paper that I buy. I don't wish I could say I made it, but it's from Nepal. It's called Lakta paper. It's used a lot by bookmakers. It's like cover weight. I lived in Philadelphia for 5 years. I got an MFA at PAFA too, and that's how I met Tina and Mike. I went there to study painting, but I got pretty into relief printmaking. And then back in I want to say about 2008, a friend of mine asked me to make some shadow puppets for a performance he wanted to do with his band. That was kind of like a natural progression from relief printmaking, which I've been doing a lot. And you know, like the puppets tended to get more and more, shadow puppets tended to get more and more sort of elaborate and detailed and not really that great for performances. And I got the idea to sort of do that as a static piece of artwork. So and I was working at a bookmaking paper store here in Ann Arbor, Michigan for a while, and found this paper and thought, well, this would be perfect. Under the glass, you kind of can't see it, but it's got a lot of imperfections and stuff like that. It's kind of a cottage industry. The paper comes from Nepal, and a lot of it's being made like outdoors. It's got a lot of character. The tiger and the witch are both based on puppets I had made for performances, plays I wrote or collaborated with somebody on. Yeah, open to any questions or comments.
What is your process for developing the images?
The witch is Baba Yaga, so it comes out of that fairy tale. The kind of dragon thing in the upper right is based on the images of the beast from the book Revelations. The tiger is based on actually a collage a friend of mine with a bunch of, he cut out a bunch of eyes and put it on cut paper, tiger. But it's I think originally inspired by the poem Dream Tiger by Borges. And that serpent dragon thing, I don't know, that just kind of happened. So I just, I draw on the sort of backside of the paper, which is paler. It's not as bright a color. I think it's where the pulp goes on the form, and then just cut it with an X-Acto blade, and then lay it down on another piece of paper with rice paste.
Wonderful to look at. Thank you.
I must say that a print by Tom, Magic Monkey Friend, was one of the first pieces that Tina and I bought when we started collecting art. So he sort of got us going. So it's good to have you here in the show.
Great to be here. And really enjoying seeing everybody's work. I'm really glad that you had this, because wasn't able to come out for the show, so it's great seeing it.
Yeah, that is one advantage of the Zoom. It gets to bring us together from afar.
For sure.
So next, we're coming to the paintings of Jim Stewart. Hello, Jim.
Hello there and hello, everybody. And thanks to Tina and Mike for this opportunity. I'm really honored. Just to go down the list, starting with background, I grew up in Philadelphia. I went to UArts before it was UArts, when it was the museum school, where I majored in illustration, and I worked for 15 years as an illustrator in Philadelphia, and then moved into graphic design and contended with that for quite a long time. When it became clear that it was getting to be retirement time, I went to Fleischer and I ran into Stanley Beelan, who is my connection to PAFA, because Stanley was firmly, Stanley was firm about the sort of arte da costa way of painting. And I learned heaps from him, most of which doesn't show here. Painting has evolved over time. I now try and do paintings that are, what's the word, that evolve from themselves. Something rough goes on, maybe it's a little memory or something like that. And then I keep putting paint on until I get something that feels okay to me. And then I stop, feeling that a painting should be slightly incomplete to give the viewer a little bit of a something to think about. And it saves me a lot of work, I guess. And that's really all I have to say. Did I thank Michael? And yes, I did.
So, Jim, where does your imagery come from?
It's memory, sketches, very occasionally plein air drawings and paintings that I then work over, beat up. These paintings just change. And which has what I think of as a good effect, because they have a very warped surface.
And are you using the palette knife and the brush, or?
Palette knife and the brush, and the new love of my life, these rubber spatulas, which you can draw on with the edge or do this kind of thing. And they come in all kinds of sizes and give you a softer, hard thing than a palette knife does.
And is landscape your focus?
Yes, landscape is actually, I never started saying I'm going to paint a landscape here, but a landscape is in a way, my way of solving the problem of making the painting work. That is, if I tried to just make a completely abstract painting, it wouldn't be very good. But at a certain point, you begin to say, well, I can see where the horizon line wants to be. I'm thinking that maybe the sky is yellow in this one, not the gray it is now, that kind of thing. And they talk to each other while they're sitting on the wall in my studio. So I'm just a vessel.
Well, they're wonderful. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Mike.
So the next work we come to is the work of John Hubbard. So he is a colleague of mine, also in Michigan, but he's in Gwinn, Michigan, which is the Upper Peninsula. So unfortunately, John can't be here tonight, so I'm going to read his statement as well. So John says, the works in this exhibit are examples of my production as a painter, and more recently, the interest I have developed in exploring my feathered friends. Ravens that reside here and in other areas of the country have become a dominant theme in my work. Ravens and crows have proven to be very intelligent birds, and aside from monkeys, are one of the few animals that use tools to assist in their activities. I have never really stopped to explore this bird before and found it fascinating in its behaviors, and have been delighted in the many colors I have found in what I thought was just a large black bird. Unfortunately, ravens and crows have gotten a bad rap, having been used in horror movies, comics, and other outlets that project a negative image of this bird. The series originally started with a painting of a chicken owned by a friend of mine in Kentucky. He saw the painting and bought it. That began a long line of paintings portraying not only chickens, but turkeys, and especially vultures. I never stopped to look at these animals and the beauty of their forms, and especially their heads. Vultures in particular have an amazing variety of patterns on their heads that, again, are so foreign to what we think of as birds, and that eat roadkill and other dead carrion. At the time I did the first chicken, I was reading a biography of the Wright brothers. This, of course, heightened by my interest in flight, since the brothers had closely studied birds and how they are able to glide and fly. The 4 paintings in this exhibit were done as preliminary studies for what I hoped would be larger, more complex works, exploring the images more deeply. I had 2 paintings that fit the parameters of the exhibition. Short on time, I did 2 more, one a raven, the other a portrait of my son's dog. The dog snuck into the group due to time restriction and the fact that people often ask me to paint portraits of their dogs, but that's another story. And as for the giraffe, it's another interesting head shape there as well. As a visual artist, I never stopped looking for things that could be developed as a painting. It becomes a way of life and makes the world an exciting place to explore. So that's John's statement. And I'd like to add on a personal note that I attended, before coming to Philadelphia, Northern Michigan University in their master program. And John was my mentor there. And I was green as grass, and he helped put me on my path as an artist and a teacher. So I'm very grateful to John. So thank you, John, wherever you are. And next, we're going to see the work of Julie Zahn, who is here with us tonight. Hello, Julie.
Hi. So this work is they're not prints, they're mixed media work. I use a substrate of Reeves BFK usually. And I put woodcut, I'm a printmaker and a painter. I studied at the Academy, and I have to say it was great to see Tony Ciambella here tonight because I learned so much from him at the Academy. It changed everything when he taught us so many things about materials and techniques, and that's one of my big interests. So for an example on this cardinal, I'll use, instead of just pigment out of a tube, the blue on the right side is using soy milk that I soak soybeans, and then I squeeze it through cheesecloth, and then I add pigment, and it binds the pigment. It's a technique I learned over in Kyoto after I studied at the Academy. I went over there and studied water-based woodcut, and then I apprenticed with an antique screen restorer for most of the year. But then towards the end of my year, I discovered something called katazome, and I learned the pigment binding techniques, etc. So here you have, again, here I'm using woodcut to make my birds. I make a little kind of a template, and I figure out where to cut on the the wood cut. And I cut it out, add a beak, you know. These are technically collages, but I fit them, say this one here, it's a wood cut. And then I have my bird image that I made out of soy milk and sumi, etc., cut out. And then I will trace the shape of the bird onto my substrate woodcut, and I peel it off. So you know, good paper has many layers. You spray it with water, you can peel it off. And then I use wheat starch paste, glue it on, pound it with a kind of brush that bookbinders use, you know, pound it. And so it really melts with the paper. So technically they're collages, but they're not on top. They're not glued on top of the paper. They're fit in. Was that all 4 of them? Oh, on the top one, the first top left, I also use, I print up, say, a piece of linoleum and run it through a press to get some of the background. I really like that density of material, density using oil-based ink. And so that quite a bit of that piece is oil-based ink, as in a monoprint.
Julie, what is it about birds that attracts?
Oh, birds. Well, this is part of my like COVID bird series, because when COVID hit, you know, we were all like stuck inside, not knowing what's going on. And I said, I'm gonna do 100 of these birds. That's how I'm gonna get through this. So I started really cranking up my production. But what I started when my brother, who was an amateur ornithologist just in Rochester, New York, he was getting married and I needed a wedding gift for him. So I decided to do my first bird, and I was just, you know, so excited. Why haven't I been doing this for years? So that was about maybe 4 years ago, but I've now branched into different birds. Like I've got this whole beach bird series, you know, that are based on monoprints and other birds. But a lot of these images, they're either woodcut or katazome, which is the Japanese stencil dyeing, and also painting. You know, this one right here demonstrates those techniques. There's a little woodcut, a little bit of painting, you know, the gold with that. So.
They're really beautiful.
Oh, thank you. And then the frames, I make my frames using lumber from milled by Christopher Company Limited, which is an amazing, if you don't know about him, he sells milled wood and also great, he sells beautiful frames, but he's taught me everything I know about framing, really. He won't sell you lumber unless you know what unless he gives you like a 2-hour lecture about how to cut your, you know, and then he'll come to your shows and inspect your miter edges, make sure you're worthy of buying his wood.
I don't think we've seen him here yet.
Oh, okay.
Maybe he'll come.
No, he's probably hasn't. Pretty busy. I don't know. Yeah.
You passed the test by now?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Julie.
Sure. If you have any questions, let me know.
I actually have a question.
Question.
I'm fascinated about the soy milk like that you use as a binder.
Yeah.
Can you talk more about that? Like what do you combine straight pigment with the soy milk, or are you
yeah, I usually
what
use
mediums are you
pigment.
using?
I usually use pigment sticks as opposed to dry pigment, but you can use dry pigment. I just stay away from it for, you know, it's so dangerous. Well, I mean, it's not so dangerous probably, but I just try to cut my risks. So I get these gorgeous pigment sticks from a guy in California who sells, he sources them from Japan, and they're either red, he has a couple shades of blue, or just sumi, but you can use dry pigment and just use a mortar and pestle, And what's amazing, the soy is as impervious, as an acrylic, like as a polymer. Yeah.
It's really cool.
Can
I saw
get-
these, and I couldn't tell if they were.
I'll
when I
describe the technique if you want. Well, in here, the only places I use it are those gray, in the birds. I use that on, often I'll use it on BFK Reeves again, or rice paper. But when so that white, on the bird next to the gray, I will have just painted that paper, and then I position this kind of template. It's very time consuming, but it's really worth it because you position your template where you think where there's a little white, okay, hey, that's gonna make that look like a nuthatch. Is that the name of a bird? I don't know, but I'm not an expert on the actual birds. But another great thing about having this as a project is I live on a corner lot in Philadelphia, but I have, a fair amount of space and I've been planting native shrubs and whatnot. And now I have so many, just dozens of birds come all the time. They live here. And, I have birds nesting on my porch. They're just everywhere. It's part of the atmosphere of my house. It's really been a great thing. Any other questions?
Thanks, Julie.
Okay. Thank you.
And next we have Diane Tomash.
Hi, Michael. Can
How
you
are you?
hear me?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad you made it.
Me too.
So yes, please tell us about yourself and your work.
Well, I started my art career in textile design. I was a young woman and I worked in New York for a little while. I started out as a colorist and I became a designer for a while in textiles back in the day. But my first love was always painting and etching and drawing. These were done plein air. These were done in plein air outside painting, except for the flowers, of course. Those were done from real pansies brought into the studio. And the challenge with flowers is always that flowers move. But painting outside a lot, everything moves. So painting the flowers indoors was okay. They only last for so long, so you have to move on it. The others were done in plein air. I live at the Jersey Shore. I live in southern Ocean County. So there's a lot of marshes, reeds, egrets, as we see here. This was painted near the end of the day. I call it greeted by nature's rhythm. And when you're outside for a long time, you are greeted by nature's rhythm and you realize all the wonderful birds and the wonderful wildlife. It has its own rhythm and it becomes, I don't like the word meditative, but it becomes a little bit of that. You get lost in it. And I love that. That's what keeps me going back out. The other one was also done at the end of the day, the rose sunset. These are oils. They're on linen, and oil does forgive you, give you time to move around. And I reworked some of it indoors. This I worked on it a little bit inside. You don't always get what you want immediately outside. It looks very yellow on the computer. It's not that yellow in real life.
Yeah, you can't trust the computer color.
Different. This was another South Jersey painting in Cumberland County. I traveled for this one in a town called Millville, and it was a rainy day, and the fog set in, the gentle, beautiful fog. And I love to paint in the fog. And that's how that was. Are there any questions or?
Yes, any questions for Diane?
Diane, are you using a palette knife in some of these, or is it all with brush strokes?
It's mostly brush, but occasionally I do use a knife. These are linen mounted on birch, so they can take a knife if I choose it. But for the most part, it's brush.
They're really wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you for the opportunity to show, you and Tina. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Wonderful show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
And
Yes, thank you.
the show is up through the 24th of December. So we hope you can come down to see it in person. And everything is available on our website as well. So we will end here and hope you have a great night.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mike
You
and
too.
Tina.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.